Today on the Home Winemaking channel, I'm going to solve a question that could be keeping you up at night, and that is, why is my wine still cloudy a couple months after fermentation? If you like winemaking topics like this, be sure to swing by my Patreon page, patreon.com/makewine for more content. Normally, a couple months after fermentation is when you're going to start to see your wine really begin to clear up. And before you were to ever put that wine in bottles, you really want to see it crystal clear. And I mean sparkling, no haze whatsoever, even when you look through a whole thickness of a carboy, because you really don't want that dust looking kind of unsettling appearance in the bottle, for one thing, and you don't want any sort of unexpected secondary fermentations to kick off in bottle, which is often what could happen when you bottle a hazy wine. So if your wine's still a little bit cloudy come, 2, 3, even 4 months after fermentation, that's really not that unusual, and it's not anything to be that worried about. Normally, I figure on about 5 months before bottling white wine, and white wines are usually the big culprit here when we're talking about haze. So just be patient. Don't live on that 1 month kit wine mentality where you're like, oh, it says 1 month, this should be good to go. Well, when you're making real deal wines from grapes, it's just not always the case. The most common reason that a wine isn't clearing up as quick as you would expect is just going to be a lot of dissolved CO2. So if you store a wine kind of cold, which I often will do with my white wines, it can support a lot more carbon dioxide in solution. CO2 is more soluble in a colder liquid. So just that cold storage in itself can kind of slow that natural degassing process, which can create a little more, bubbles that are sort of holding up some of these solids that would otherwise clear up in a perfectly still wine. Another cause of that CO2 could be some sort of microbial action happening in the wine. So let's say you didn't sulfite after fermentation, you probably have malolactic fermentation happening at this point, which will keep that wine nice and cloudy. It's going to create its own CO2, and just the presence of all that bacteria in the wine is going to make it cloudy. Now, often by choice, you're going to do a malolactic fermentation, but it's something you want to know about, because often in my white wines, I'll choose not to do malolactic fermentation to get those more bright fruit flavors versus those more savory, buttery flavors. If you want to kind of speed up the process, you can do a light degassing in the wine. Just be careful, because it can foam right over the top, and it's honestly hard to do it without it foaming over the top, even if you take, 1 bottle worth of wine out of that carboy. So, 9 out of 10 times, I'm just going to let time do its thing, and I'm just going to wait that 3 to 4 months for that white wine to naturally clear up. Now, there's some more challenging reasons that the wine might still be hazy, some things that might actually require you to take action other than just letting that wine sit and let time do its thing. So the one is going to be a pectin haze. This is especially common when you're making a fruit wine. It's a little bit less common in grape wines, but it still can happen. And if you don't know what pectin is that kind of gooey, gelatinous substance that kind of binds the plant cells together. It's also what makes a jam a jam. So what I'll do to prevent this pectin haze from kind of excess pectin from happening is I'll always use an enzyme, usually pectic enzyme, during or before fermentation to just break up that pectin. You can know if you're dealing with a pectin haze by taking a few drops of your wine and adding it to a small cup of 90% isopropyl alcohol. So if it's a pectin-based haze, usually it'll get kind of like stringy in the alcohol, or it could even form a little bit of like a gel at the bottom of your little cup. So if you see that, it's a pectin-based haze, which you're normal fining agents just aren't going to take care of. Your best bet is going to be just to add a heavy dose of pectic enzyme even after fermentation is complete. You have to add a heavy dose because it's just much less effective when there's actually alcohol in the solution versus if you were to add it to the juice before fermentation. Another kind of challenging form of haze would be protein haze. This is usually going to show up when the wine is heated up for the first time. So a wine can actually be crystal clear when you're storing it at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and then all of a sudden you drive it, on a vacation and it hits 80 degrees for the first time, and all of a sudden out of nowhere that wine becomes cloudy. They'll call that, a heat instability in the wine, but it's really because of excess protein in the wine. If you have a variety that is kind of known to have excess protein, what you can do is use bentonite during fermentation. To me, that's kind of the easiest, best way to use bentonite. Or you can use it after fermentation, or you can put the wine through a heat cycle just to see if it's going to get that haze or not, and see if you're just wasting your time with bentonite. I don't really like to use these fining agents if I don't absolutely have to, because they're going to take out things in that wine that you might not necessarily want to take out, things that might add character to the wine. So let's kind of get into these fining agents. In the event that you really do need to use fining agents, kind of help you choose what to use. Fining agents are going to come kind of in two main forms. You're going to have positively charged fining agents and negatively charged fining agents. And you can think about that like you take a piece of Scotch tape and put your finger up to it, the Scotch tape will suck to your finger. That's because Scotch tape has a negative charge. Well, the same thing happens with these fining agents. If you take a positively charged fining agent and mix it into your wine, anything that has an opposite charge or a negative charge is going to be attracted to that fining agent, and that fining agent's heavier than your wine solution, so it's going to settle out and take those oppositely charged particles with it. One note I will make is some fining agents are less heavy than others too. So like albumen, which comes from egg whites, if you were to use the pure egg white form of that, it has a specific gravity of about 1.03, which can be in the range of a wine if you're dealing with a sweet wine, which I sometimes will stall a wine to make a sweet wine. If you stalled it all the way up at a specific gravity of 1.03, you tried to fine it with an egg white, that egg white is going to stay on the top because it's lighter than the solution that you're trying to get it to settle to. Your gold standard negatively charged fining agents are going to be number one, bentonite. That's like the gold standard fining agent. Kiesolsol, albumen, which is your egg white. These are going to be kind of your big negatively charged fining agents. And again, these are only going to take out things with a positive charge. And the big thing that it's really going to take out is going to be proteins. So unless you have a protein haze, personally, I would say just give the wine time and forget about the fining agents. If you can stand to wait 3, 4, 5 months, your white wine's going to be clear without wasting time with the fining agents and not taking out things you might not have planned to take out. The big positively charged fining agents are going to be your sparkolloid, chitosan, which is crustacean based, so like shells of things like little shrimps and things. Somehow they make this chitosan. Gelatin, which comes from bones of cows and pigs. Isinglass, which comes from fish swim bladders. Or casein, which comes from milk. And as I'm saying these things, it becomes blatantly obvious why some wines are not necessarily vegan friendly. That's all going to come down to the fining agents. It's not going to be the actual grapes itself that are causing these vegan friendly issues. So these positively charged fining agents will take out things like suspended yeast, but it'll also take out things like tannin. These have negative charges. And in a white wine, I don't mind to take out a little bit of tannin, but in a red wine, I would never, unless I absolutely had to, use a positively charged fining agent. I just like my red wines to be big and structured, and to do that, you really require a lot of tannin. There are some combination products. So if you were to make a kit wine, you'll often see it comes with 2 fining agents. It's usually going to come with chitosan and kiesolsol, which that is often marketed as super clear. So then you're taking out both positively and negatively charged things in the wine. Now, if you read the instructions on that, it'll usually say to mix it up, add one, mix the other one up, add that. Personally, I think it's worth waiting between additions, so maybe adding one, waiting a couple weeks, and then adding the other one. Because if you add a positively charged thing with a negatively charged thing, naturally those two things are going to try to attract to each other and have no charge. They're going to neutralize the charge. Back to the charge thing too, I mentioned that a pectin haze, I didn't mention to use any sort of fining agent on that. That's because a pectin at the pH of wine has a neutral charge. So these positive or negatively charged things, you're just wasting your time. You're going to sit there waiting for something to happen, and nothing's going to happen. I hope that helped, let you sleep better at night. In most cases, my advice would be do nothing, just be patient with the wine. But if you've been patient with the wine and it has been 4 or 5 months and that wine has still got a little bit of a haze to it, it's time to start thinking about, are you dealing with a protein or are you dealing with a pectin, which are going to be the likely 2 things when you're getting that far into the aging period. Thanks for watching.